have a choice to create a personal brand, ask yourself, who do you want to be remembered as? And carve that path from day one. I am Hasbin, class of 2006. Thank you for listening.
Please be patient. Okay, we are solving a few technical issues with Mr. Fadrullah. Okay, so hopefully you will stay on. Okay, be patient a little while.
Assalamualaikum.
Waalaikumsalam.
Okay.
Waalaikumsalam.
Waalaikumsalam warahmatullahi. Yeah.
Sorry
Okay,
for the
so
technical glitch. Connecting using my phone now.
okay, Assalamualaikum. Okay, may we start, Mr. Fadrullah?
Yes, yes.
Okay. Ladies and gentlemen, okay, our session will start shortly. Can I have your attention, please? Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Wassalatu wassalamu ala ashrafi anbiya'i wa mursalin wa ala alihi wa sahbihi ajma'in. Honorable Mr. Fadrullah, okay. Let us look our this respected Professor Madya Dr. Azrul Abdullah, our beloved KPP, okay, and all AJK for the Accounting Global Week. Okay, good afternoon. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. And very good afternoon to everyone. Okay, first of all, I would like to welcome all of you to the Accounting Global Week 2022. I'm Puan Faiza, will serve you as a moderator for the second session today. Okay, before we start, I would like to remind all of you regarding the question and answer session. The question and answer session will begin at the end of the presentation of Mr. Fadrullah. You may ask question, okay, or you verbally or direct to the presenter, or you may also type in the chat box, okay. And for student, please fill in. There are 3 attendance link. Okay, first attendance link. Secondly, this is the link for e-certification. And lastly is the link for program evaluation and feedback before the session ends. Okay, so make sure you fill up all these 3 links. Okay, so let us start with today's session. It is a great pleasure for me to introduce our distinguished guest speaker today, Mr. Muhammad Fadrullah Ahmad Safian, okay, who will be giving us a talk on the key risks and area of focus for the internal audit in 2022. Okay, this subject area will be deeply interest us due to the challenges that we faced during the past pandemic. Okay, and now we are moving to the endemic era, which is post-COVID-19, which has impact all of us and the world greatly. Okay, before the presentation starts, allow me to introduce our speaker for today, Mr. Muhammad Fadrullah, handsome young man. Okay, who is now a senior business analyst and serving as a manager in PwC Australia. Okay, how are you, Mr. Farullah? Hopefully you are in the best of health today.
Alhamdulillah, all good here.
Okay. With a 9 years experience in business analysis, okay, both in agile and waterfall methodology from various areas, namely finance center of excellence, implementation and operational support, HR system transformation, as well as rigorous software development. He is also very experienced in system implementation project, software development, solution and implementation procurement process, system support and tertiary education of lecturing and coaching. Okay, Mr. Fadrullah received his first degree in Bachelor of Accounting from UiTM Arau. Okay, I remember when he was one of my students back in 2008, 2009, Mr. Fadrullah. Okay,
Correct, yes.
and obtained his master degree also from UiTM. Okay, he is quite close to our heart as lecturers in UiTM. Okay, then he began his career as a lecturer also back in UiTM in 2012 to 2014. And then he started his corporate career with big organizations, okay, as Petronas, as in Petronas, okay, Cargill Holdings, Malaysia Berhad, Sdn Berhad, sorry, LexisNexis, and almost all of these companies, he served as a business analyst, which make him as an experienced business analyst, okay. And so we are now looking to the next CEO in the making, inshallah, Mr. Fadrullah.
Inshallah.
In few years time, okay, we are looking for Mr. Fadrullah as the next CEO, hopefully, okay.
Ameen.
Ameen, inshallah. Okay, without further ado, I would like to welcome Mr. Fadrullah Ahmad Safian to deliver his presentation entitled The Key Risks and Areas of Focus for Internal Audit in 2022. Okay, Mr. Fadrullah, the screen is now yours. Thank you very much. Assalamualaikum.
All right, thank you, Puan Faiza, for the lovely introduction. I do apologize that there is some technical glitch that I might not be able to share my slides with you at the moment. I am connecting with all of you using my phone instead of my laptop. So yeah, unfortunately, I can't share the slides. So let's just make use of whatever time we have, and I'll point you to. I'll make sure that this is going to be a interactive a session as possible. For everyone, before I start the session, it is just wanna bring your attention to the context here. I am speaking with all of you based on my context as the alumni of the university. I am not the representative of my current employer, nor that I am giving any professional advice pertaining to the internal audit area. So as correctly pointed by Puan Faiza during the introduction, yes, I have my education from my diploma up until my master's degree from UiTM. So UiTM is very close to my heart. served as a lecturer when I started my career teaching financial accounting as well as accounting information system and corporate finance. That was where, so yeah, Puan Faiza was my lecturer. I think Cik Azrul, we have also Cik Hamdan. Sorry, I can't see the list of attendees here. Now, I am talking in the capacity of a business analyst, and even though the topic is related to internal audit, the reason why I chose that topic was because throughout my career, in implementing solutions and softwares, I have dealt with a lot of risks and issues related to technology specifically, and I've worked closely with the internal audit team. So that is where I find, oh, this is a very interesting topic for us to talk about, just to make sure.
Excuse me, Mr. Fadrullah, you
Yep.
can WhatsApp me your slides and I will get the AJK to share the screens, okay?
Yeah, let me try. I've already downloaded it. Hold 1 second. Getting into Hamdan's email. Or maybe can you pass me your email address, Puan Faiza? I can send it now to you. Presentation. Hold on. Hamdan. Oops. 1 second. All right, the slide is on the way. faizakazi@gmail.com. Yeah. Let me know if you don't receive it within the next few minutes. So where was I? 1 second. Right, cool. So yeah, it's interesting where the recent global pandemic has impacted us in a sense that it brings something that was abnormal back then becomes a normal now. So the term that we normally use here is normalizing the abnormal. So in terms of the way we work, the way we collaborate have already evolved significantly. So and as a business analyst, I have to work with multiple stakeholders at one time, concurrently, in different projects to transform different part of the business. So as that is where I think I was made informed that the audience for this session are mainly from the Diploma of Accounting Information System. Correct me if I'm wrong. And I think it is a very interesting course to be with. If I had that back then when I did my diploma, I would have chosen a Diploma of Accounting Information System rather than Diploma of Accounting. So if I'm being honest, the reason being when I graduated or when and after I started becoming a lecturer with UiTM, that's where my interest sparked, where I thought, oh, it is interesting if we were able to marry accounting or any arts related courses with IT or technology. Doesn't mean that you have to go through all these rigorous courses to become a technical system specialist. No, you have to understand how technology can assist and facilitate and make your life easier as an accountant or as a finance professional. So that's where I've pulled the trigger I decided to quit becoming a lecturer and then get my hands dirty in the corporate life. So I joined Petronas back then as a functional business analyst, maintaining treasury system. So I was the go-to person for them when for the business users when they're facing issues with system. So my responsibility partly was to investigate the issues, understand how the system works, understand the accounting procedures behind the system, understand how the system capture the accounting transactions, and then come up with a solution. And I have to work with both the accountants as well as the technical specialists at the back in the IT department. So that's where I started my career in marrying both accounting and IT. So yeah, we can see the slides there now, right? So I think we can jump straight into it. So yeah, this article was written by the KPMG in the context of GCC. But I think when I read the article, it is also applicable to my landscape now, which is in Australia. So hence, I would want to share with you and share with all of you what my take is on each of the items. So internal audit function needs to be agile in its audit approach to adapt to the changing landscape. So before we dive deeper into this topic, we have to make sure that we understand what does internal audit means. So depending on which area or which perspective you're looking at, you define the internal audit. It's not differently, it's how you want to make sure that you understand what it encompasses. So internal audit is referring to, if you're looking from the perspective of the users, for me, under a broader term, you would say that internal audit serves the internal stakeholders within the company. So you will be able to, go dive deeper in the difference between of internal audit and the external audit. But in terms of internal audit in this context, to make it easier to understand, we'll say that internal audit serve the internal stakeholders of the company, which is the board of directors, as well as all the management level, senior managers, directors within an organization. So your audience of the report that you produce as an internal auditors will be mainly used by these people within the organization. Now, because of these new ways of working, due to the global pandemic, of course, I think we all must be tired of listening to the word of global pandemic by now. But that is the unspoken truth that we have to address. That is the elephant that in the room that we have to address. It breeds these new norms and also challenges and risks. So that is where internal audit, as the people who normally the internal auditors are the employee of the company. It is slightly different in Australia because it is becoming a norm now that organization outsource their internal audit functions. But I think in Malaysia, internal audit is still being an integral part of the team within an organization. So as an internal auditor, they have to think 3 steps ahead. They have to think about, okay, now people are still work from home. People rely more on technology as not rely more on the technology compared to the previous era. So what can go wrong? So basically, that is what they have to think about. What can go wrong and what can they do better? So when people hear about audit, they got scared because they got anxious because they think that this will be the police officers within the organization that will catch them when they did something wrong. That is the stigma or the perception that needs to change, because internal auditors, they are not always playing the cap of a policeman or police officers. They will try to make sure that whatever that you're doing, you're not risking the company or the organization. So when due to this new challenging landscape, they have to make sure that they adapt well. And these are the themes that have been identified in 2022 in terms of the audit area. So if you remember back then when we had those economic crisis, you have those economic scandals within an organization, Enron, WorldCom, and then you have those financial crises. The internal audit back then resolved around corporate governance. Though they focus more on corporate governance, they came up with a lot of new regulation and standards pertaining to corporate governance. Now it's more or less the same thing. We were hit by a global pandemic. And what does that mean to an organization to make sure that they future-proof themselves? So based on that, the teams that they were thinking about, okay, they need to improve on this area. Those areas are talent management and succession planning. Simply said, it's about retaining or finding new capable employees to join the company and to stay with the company. The second one is changes in the tax landscape. So as internal auditors, you are not just looking at financial statements. No, when you say auditor, doesn't mean that you are an accountant. So internal auditor have to be very skillful and agile in learning every single operations within an organization. So that includes human resource, that includes tax session as well. So changing in the way of working also impact the way the tax landscape as well. So as an internal auditor, they have to be very sensitive towards any changes in the tax landscape. The next one is the evolving compliance and regulations. Even though we got hit by a health-related a crisis, not a fraudulent or economic crisis, it somehow impact the compliance and regulation as well. For tax landscape and compliance and regulation landscape, we, sorry, hello, yep. Cool. I'll continue then. So the next one is supply chain disruption. This is where your goods for your business to operate got disrupted. Business resilience, you don't have any enough resources to continue with your business. Resources here can mean your financial resources. It can mean your assets. It can mean your human resources as well. Cyber and data security, this is the most popular thing being addressed now, being highlighted now. How do companies make sure that they are hackers proof? So the one that we just faced just now was a good example where in my current employer, we don't use Microsoft suites, we are using Google suites. And there's a lot of firewalls and security measures being put in place, and WebEx is not actually one of the approved ones. Hence, I have to communicate with all of you using my phone. And then we have liquidity management. Liquidity management also will become a key risk area for internal auditors to look at, because like I mentioned just now, auditors are not looking at what non-compliance people commit. They are looking also at how to make sure that it is future-proofed as well. So liquidity management is definitely something that they want to look at. We're still on the right slide. All good. And then digitalization and intelligent and automation. Obviously, when we were hit by the pandemic, we were concerned about whether we have the right tools and technology in place to continue business and make sure that our business as usual can operate flawlessly. Managing third-party relationship, this is another interesting bit. So all companies are not operating on its own. It has suppliers, it has vendors. So they have to make sure that they manage this relationship well and the contracts well. And finally, the things that have been becoming more popular now, which is environmental, social, and governance. It is quite popular here as part of the things that to look forward to, especially when New Zealand already announced that it is compulsory for them to report on the ESG in their annual report. So it's a long introduction. Hopefully in the next slides, I don't have to go very detailed in every area. If we go to the next slide. So this is about the talent management and succession planning. So the reason why it has to be addressed post-pandemic, because during pandemic, people got laid off. During pandemic, people lost their jobs. During pandemic, they got a pay cut. During pandemic, also people had the time to reassess what makes them happy. So in Australia, I'm not sure. I think you'll know what you're well known of the term the Great Resignation. It is happening right now, where it is a very hot market where people resign and people want to move jobs. They're not happy with their current jobs. So companies now needs to think of a way how to retain their current employee. And at the same time, they have to think about how to attract more capable talent. And for example, the clear example was working from home. Working from home 10 years back was a luxury for some people. It is not accessible to everyone. So when a company wants to attract talents, they will say, okay, we will provide you with the ability and the benefits of working from home. That was to entice new talents to join them. But nowadays, working from home is a norm. It is no longer a lucrative things to lure the new talents to join them. So these are the things that they have to be they have to put in place to make sure that they can attract the right one. And by doing so, they have to reassess their hire to retire process from the day they advertise the role up until the day a person resigns. And also, organizations have been investing on succession planning. So this is where um, they try to train new talents, existing talents, to be the future leader of the organization. At the same time, they want to make sure that they will be able to retain those talents, because it's going to be a waste when they train people and suddenly people left. So those are the things that needs to be in place. But again, so what to us or to you as a diploma in accountancy, diploma in accounting information system? So this is where I want to open your eyes that being in a diploma of accounting information system doesn't mean that your path is only accounting. You can you can do everything within an organization. So as an internal auditor, you have to also be able to understand the process behind hiring a person and retiring a person within an organization. So the capabilities, as you can see here, the capabilities required here are clear focus on organizational goals. So you have to understand what organization goals are. You have to learn and become an expert in evaluating the organization talent metrics, identifying and addressing the gaps. And you should be able to have that critical thinking skills where you are able to benchmark whatever that you have within the organization or within your organization against the your competitors or other organizations. So moving on to the next one, which is the changes in the tax landscape. This is a good example that I want to share with you. Obviously, now that people are able to travel back anywhere, so there's all the other multinational corporations stuff, in, PwC included. So I had the opportunity, PwC came up with something called as a scheme or a program where it allows their employees to travel to their home countries, especially for those that are not local in Australia, to go back to their home country and spend time with their families, and also continuing to work. So, but by doing that, it is not as simple as you inform your team leader and then your team leader will go will allow you. No, it is not as simple as that. You have to go through this rigorous assessment process where the internal team will assess the country that you want to go to, what's the tax landscape is like. So how many days can you go back home and work from home or work from your home country? So it the reason why they had to do so, because when you work overseas for a certain number of days within a year, that will trigger a tax implication. So having this global outbreak or pandemic, it kind of signals to the tax authorities to also ensure they have updated their regulations, and also for the internal people within an organization, they also have to make sure that they comply with every single regulation introduced by the regulator. That's where internal audit team comes into the picture, where they have to make sure that all these procedures are being followed accordingly, because the risk would be any non-compliance will trigger either penalties by the regulator, also reputational risk to the company. So uh, that is why it is important, and things that needs to be looked at from the internal audit perspective. In terms of the capabilities required from the internal audit, obviously, um, I think for those students along the way, you'll be taking courses like taxation. So you need to understand how to read and understand those tax clauses. So by understanding that, you will be able to understand the new tax challenges, trend dynamics imposed by the government bodies, and ability to interpret tax laws, as well as understanding what will those changes means to your organization, and then what kind of policies that within the organization, within your organization, that needs to be changed, updated, or closely monitored. So that is the reason why changes in tax landscape is also a trend that internal auditors have to look at within in this 2022. Next is the evolving compliance and regulation. I think I've already touched that in my example just now. Compliance and regulation, when again this is related to the first, the first one, that was talent management and succession planning, tax and landscape, as well as compliance and regulation, because within the organization you will tend to introduce new programs will lead to new policies and procedures, and you have to also comply with that on top of the external regulations that you have to follow. For example, the going back to home country program just now. So as an internal auditor, you have to be very sensitive to the changes that's happening within your landscape, to make sure that those changes are being captured into your audit plan, and make sure that you are testing it correctly, and making sure that you and your organization does not go into non-compliance scenario. And the capabilities required from the internal auditor is the sound understanding of the regulatory body's requirements, ability to identify and quantify the impact of non-compliance, that is very important, as well as the audit program in line with the compliance risk. So basically, you, in a nutshell, you look at whatever changing out there, you filter them, look what from those list of changes will impact your organizations, and then you form your audit plan accordingly. So there's no one thing carved in stones. You have to read, understand, and try to embed that into your organization. So that's how I put it. Next one is supply chain disruption. Supply chain disruption is not really close to the area that I have experience with. So what does it mean is, as I mentioned just now, company is not, or an organization is not um, operating on its own. It has customers, it has vendors, it has suppliers. So all these stakeholders may impact or may have contracts involved. So due to the pandemic, we had these disruptions where some of the vendors collapse, some of the customers bankrupt, went into bankruptcy. You won't be able to get your revenue. And then some of your suppliers would not be able to fulfill their part of the bargain, fulfill the contract. So how do you mitigate? How do you future-proof yourself? So that is what needs to be considered in the plan by the auditors. The auditors have to then revisit their existing supply chain policy and see whether things can be further enhanced, or some things that is outdated can be scrapped off. I have had the opportunity to work with an organization when I was with the consulting business within PwC, where we had the opportunity to transform the supply chain processes. So that's where the work that we did was, we look at the policies that are in place, we look at the processes that are in place, and then we see whether we identify and assess whether those are still applicable in the current landscape or not. So the process was very collaborative between us and the clients, and then we challenge them whether those applications or so those processes and systems are still relevant in the current era, and then propose new solutions to them. So, for example, they were still using Excel to maintain the records, which is not ideal for a company that has more than 1,000 contracts with their suppliers. So those are the things that needs to be in place. And the capabilities required is ability to understand the business process end to end when it comes to maintaining their vendors, for example, not just their vendors, all the stakeholders within the supply chain processes. And it is not a something that is hard to do. It requires you to understand and see from the business perspective, how does these activities fall into places? How do they start engaging a vendor up until how do they retire a vendor within an organization? And that's where the internal auditors have to make sure that they understand these processes, and then they should be able to update themselves, upgrade themselves in terms of the knowledge of the current practices that needs to be in place to further improve the current process. Next one would be the business resilience. Business resilience capabilities demonstrate an organization's ability to protect themselves. So this is more on the level where a business needs to be able to crisis that's happening, which is beyond their control. And then internal auditors has to be agile in thinking of a way how to make sure that the environment that they are working in survive any crisis, survive any hurdle that the external factors are giving them. So this is where it is crucial for the internal auditor to conduct an independent review, to look at the existing crisis management practices that are in place. In the corporate sector, we call it disaster recovery plan or business continuity plan. So I was fortunate enough to get involved in a couple of those exercise. So I would be able to share with you, for example, when I was maintaining or involved in the treasury management system back in those days. So put it this way, when you are dealing with a system is just a technology that can uh, go haywire one day. You can go offline. Somebody, for example, the system suddenly collapse and you don't know what to do. So those are the scenarios that we had to think way in advance to say, what if one day you switch on your laptop, the application or the software is not there? What if one day you try to submit a transaction in the system and it won't allow you to submit or approve? So those are the scenarios that you have to think, obviously within your team, and try to simulate that event and make it a practice. So it is more or less like your fire drill exercise. I'm not sure whether it's still in place in universities. I think we had a couple of those back then. So you try to do an exercise to evacuate the premise according to the special route that dedicated route that is already been the management has already decided. So you do those kind of practices even before the crisis even hit you. So this is to make sure that when it actually hits, you know what to do and you won't get panicked. So that is what an internal auditor has to do in terms of addressing this business resilience risk. So they have to make sure that if things go south, they know what to do, they know who to turn to, and then they have this backup plan to make sure that the operations um, can go zero. And again, there's no such thing as the skills carved in stones for capabilities required. As the internal auditor, you have to think creatively and critically on what can be done in terms of in the event of a crisis. So those are the things that you have to develop within your team, coming up with those scenarios and also brainstorm on the things that you can do to solve and make sure that you survive those crises. And it is important here to note that one of the capabilities required is subject matter expertise in conducting workshop. As a business analyst, that is your bread and butter. That is the skills that you have to have in order for you to be successful in your role, because you have to deal with a lot of stakeholders within the organizations, and you want to make sure that you are able to convey your point across and to convince them on the things that needs to be done. Next one would be cyber and data security. I won't touch very deep on this topic because this is not my skill set. But on a higher level, put it this way, due to the new norms, due to the ability for us to rely more on technology, it gives these opportunities to hackers to start hacking the technology that organizations are using. So the reason why they want to do this because they want to get hold on the employees' data, because you will be, for example, sensitive data like bank account numbers, passwords. Those are very highly sensitive data that, if fallen to the wrong hands, can bring disaster to not just individuals, but also to organizations. So as internal auditors, especially those specializing in security and cybersecurity and data data related area, so they have to make sure that they can come up with comprehensive plans, audit plans, to make sure that all these controls, procedures, and processes are in place, and making sure that their organization is hacker proof. Again, capabilities required in this area, obviously, for those who are very interested in a more technical side of IT, this is definitely a good area for you to venture in. Like for myself, I'm not really interested in understanding in detail the technicality behind programming, but I know what a programmer does. So I work closely with them, but asking them to translate whatever jargons that they were saying into in a more understandable business language. And another capabilities for internal auditor who wish to specialize who specialized in this area is they have to understand and be able to conduct penetration testing. So it's basically try to hack their own system. So if they are able to hack their own system, then it means that means there is some more opportunities to further improve the system. Next, liquidity management. So this is one of the areas that is close to me as a business analyst. This was the area that I started off when I left UITM and joined. I was specialized in liquidity management within the treasury area or department within the organization. Essentially, it's about how the company makes money, how do they spend the money, and how do they invest the money. So I was fortunate enough to be able to get exposed to the system or to the software that is managing these flows and transactions of funds. The reason why internal auditor have to be aware that in 2022, they have to look into this area, because people are now starting to look at, okay, I won't be working from the office. I won't be able to see my team members. I won't be able to see my vendors. I won't be able to see my bankers. So I have to rely on whatever data that can be produced with the system. And then it is the point where people have to start looking at what data can provide, what insights data can provide to you as an as a business user. So as internal auditor, you know that people are relying more on data, especially financial data, especially this data related to money coming in and money going out. So internal auditor have to start looking and assessing whether whatever processes that are in place at the moment, they are adequate, they are efficient, and they are secure. So how they can do that? They have to analyze the process. They have to test whether there are adequate control in place, and they have to review periodically whether these controls can further be enhanced, or whether there are something broken within the control process. So that's where internal auditor have to really put their eyes, cast their eyes into. Now, for an internal auditor, what kind of capabilities, what kind of skills that you have to have in order to be able to do those jobs. So you fortunate enough for diploma in accounting information system, you should be able to understand financial calculation and ratio analysis as well. So you need that skills and capabilities to be able to understand what needs to be calculated and how to calculate them and how to interpret them accordingly. And then you also need to understand how to interpret the accounting standards. And slightly to the technical side, you should be you also need to be able to understand data extraction, data enhancement, data visualization. So something to share from a corporate perspective. If you are a data nerd, try to look into this area because the future is data. If you have more data specific skills like data analysis, data visualization, it could put you in a better position to compete against other candidates when applying for a job in the future. So we'll touch a little bit more on that area in the end of the session. So that's about liquidity management. Digitalization and intelligent automation. So this is what I have been doing for the past 9 years in my career as a business analyst. Before I go there, I might take a pause here. If somebody have any questions so far. Sorry, I should have done that like maybe like 10 minutes ago. Or is it okay, Puan Faiza, for us to take question now, or maybe I'll just take it later? All right, then I think I'll just continue for now. Silence means maybe everyone is agreeing or people are paying attention. But anyway, the next one would be digitalization and intelligent automation. I might talk a little bit more on this because this has been my bread and butter for the past 9 years. So digitalization and intelligent automation refers to how you can utilize the technology to facilitate and assist you in doing business. Different organization. I mean, it doesn't mean that when you open up a company, you have to have like the best system out there. It kind of depends on your requirements and the need of the business. So as your company grow, you might need more sophisticated system and solutions to assist you in doing business and to make sure that it is secure. So because of what happened to us for the past 2 years, we learned that technology is crucial because the moment you got hit with another pandemic, if you're not able to rely on these digital tools, you might not be able to survive. Your organization might not be able to survive. So I was fortunate enough to be able to join the consulting team throughout that 2 years period, so-called dark period, where people can't go to the office, people have to rely on technology to perform their task and work. And then the moment we starting to come out from that phase, people can start, people have more information, people are more aware of what can and cannot be done to make sure that they can go to office, they can work, the business can run as usual. The first thing that came into those managements, higher managements level, are they considering what can be done to further digitalize their processes and their operations? For example, a good example was before this, managing contractors or managing vendors was not really a priority to most businesses. They think that, oh, so long as you are able to file in your contracts that you have with your vendors, so long that you are able to list them down and save it in an Excel, that should be fine. So long as you have a database of their email addresses and contact numbers, you're fine. So those are the days where lead them to not being able to track and survive during the pandemic. So they are now looking at, oh, okay, now they have to digitalize those processes. Now, because they have to do that, that leads to different bucket or different kind of worms where, yes, you have to digitalize those, but it is not as simple as, okay, I need a software. Where can I get the software? Browse for the best vendor management software, for example. It is not as simple as that. So, for example, kind of depends on what type of organizations that you are in. If you're in a government, you have different policies and procedures that you have to follow when engaging, trying to purchase a new thing. If you're in a multinational company or if you're a small company, what are the processes that need to be in place in order for you to before you can actually reach out to a vendor to purchase their products. So as an internal auditor, you have to be aware of those processes that are in place. For example, in government, you may have to put a request, get approval from the responsible departments within the government entity before you can approach and get budgets for you to run this project or purchase this software. In corporate, it will be something like that. We produce business case, meaning that we say, okay, we state the case for change. We say we need this software because of what? Provide justification, send it for approval, and then the moment the paperwork's are done, that's where we will start to engage to look at the potential technology or software in the market. There's a lot of products out there now, especially after what has happened to us for the past 2 years. So you have to look at whatever viable out there, what can you purchase, and then compare that against your requirements. So as an internal auditor, you have to be aware that fraudulent can happen. A management of a company can say, oh, I have a good relationship with this person from this software provider company. Maybe I can get a better deal if I go straight away to this person. So that's where internal auditor have to think ahead of time to make sure that the sourcing procedures are being followed accordingly. So that is one thing, one piece of it. Another piece of it is once you have already followed those process, you already pinpoint the products that can fully meet your requirement, and then you have followed all the policy, the procedures, have gone through all the approval process correctly, and then you purchased this software from a vendor. So this is where the next step is you have to work with the vendor closely to implement the software into the company or into your organization. Now, in implementing those solutions into the organization, you have to make sure that the way the system is designed, the way you implement the software is also following the process and procedures. For example, You have to go through the process where you gather requirements, you validate your requirements, you get sign off from the relevant stakeholders, then only you can start building and configuring those specific features into your environment or into your company. And then once you've configured, once you've implemented those within the specific environment, you have to test them first. So you have to test it. You have to make sure that the users test it. Then you have to make sure that whatever bugs or whatever issues that arise during the testing period have already been rectified and corrected. Get it acknowledged by the business user who tested it, and then only you can start deploying it to the wider business. So those are the things the steps that you have to follow. An internal auditor has to also make sure that these processes are being followed accordingly, because the reason being, if these processes are not being followed accordingly, it may pose the risk to the business. For example, if you didn't do proper testing, or if you just do very minimal testing and didn't get a sign off from your relevant stakeholders, you put it into the wider business. What if the system were not able to cater for the business? The system wasn't robust enough to accommodate the number or the volume of transactions per day or per hour within the business. So that's the reason an internal auditor has to be closely involved and pay attention in this digitalization process. And of course, make sure that all the audit procedures provide higher level of assurance and insights. Because without those things in place, especially in this competitive environment, you will, a non-functional system will pose a great or huge risk to the business, not just in terms of financials, but in terms of reputation as well. Why it is reputation related? Because as a business, you are also providing service to everyone else. So you may, in the end, not able to fulfill your part of the bargain. Now, as an internal auditor, what are the capabilities that are required from you? It's like I've mentioned, expertise in the business process, involved in implementing a new solution into an organization. Be a subject matter expert in the current development of latest technology. So, for example, if a department within an organization wants to deploy or buy a software, you as an internal auditor also needs to be aware of what are the potential software out there. You don't want people to just buy something just because it is cheap. So you should also know that, okay, what are the potential or the viable products out there that can deliver the requirements, and then question the business, why did you settle with this software? And then an internal auditor also needs to be an expert in change management and transformation. What does it mean by change management? Simply put this way, you want to transform from your current state to a more automated state. But this is just within your project team, so you are aware of it, but the business or the users out there might not be aware. I mean, the people from other businesses, other departments might not be aware of it. So within the project, you have to also understand change management. being how to bring this change, how to bring these users along this process of changing the way they are operating now to the way we want them to operate in the future. So as an internal auditor, you need to be an expert in it because you need to also question what kind of change management activities that needs to be in place. If it is not in place, then you have to question why, get justification. So without understanding the change management process, you won't be able to understand, you won't be able to question and ask them why such activities or such tasks are not in place. And again, digitalization and automation also involves data security and protocols, change protocols. So as an internal auditor, you have to be aware and you have to be knowledgeable in this area so that you can probe and you can understand what control needs to be in place and how to make sure that the solution is secure and no potential threats to your data and system reliability. So that's about digitalization and intelligent automation. Happy to chat about it at the end of the session. Next one would be managing third-party relationships. So this is a subset of the supply chain. Supply chain just now was end-to-end, not just the vendor. This is specifically on managing third-party relationship. You have third party that you rely on in order for you to do business. So you have to evaluate, and third party obviously will involve a lot of contractual documentations, and contracts also will lead to deliverables and ability to provide service within a stipulated time period. So as an sorry, what I meant just now was managing third-party relationship. This is specifically for the vendors. So what an internal auditor has to be aware of is to evaluate the organization's current third-party risk management policy and procedures and governance and control framework in place, evaluate the contract management processes, especially when it comes to the management of new and expiring contracts, because you don't want to be able to do business with contractors or suppliers where your contracts have already expired. And then assess the third-party compliance. For example, you also need to assess your vendor's credibility and your vendor's compliance with the regulations within the environment that they operate in. For example, the clear example is, for example, you as an organization, you work closely with let's say with Maybank, for example, and you have to assess whether Maybank is fully compliant with whatever regulation that Bank Negara has imposed to them, because the fact that if you're doing business with somebody that is not compliant to their sets of regulations, it can also pose you to threats in terms of your credibility as an organization, meaning you are transacting with people who's not ethical, who's non-compliant to their regulations. So you don't want that to happen. So as an internal auditor, you have to be able to think about that and put that consideration when you're planning your audit. And then again, as internal auditor, you also have to have you also have to develop, implement, and calibrate a monitoring system and self-reported data, because third-party managing vendors is a highly fluid process. You won't have like one third party expiring on the same day. It can happen like you will have, for example, if you're a big organization, you the vendors or suppliers expiring within the same week. So you have to have this robust monitoring system to make sure that you're on top of things. And what capabilities required for this for internal auditors in this area is you need to have a comprehensive understanding of the third party relationship that the organization have. You have to have a sound understanding on the local custom or regulation involving your third party or your suppliers, and you also have to have the skills to perform a third party audit, because without that you need I mean, for example, visiting the production sites, because without that you won't be able to attest that your vendor is actually doing what they have been telling you that they've been doing. So you have to be able to see they practice whatever that they preach. So that's what you as an internal auditor needs to be able to do in order to equip yourself for 2022. The last but not least is the environmental, social, and governance, ESG. So this is quite popular, I think, for quite some time now. And in Australia, it is picking up. We even have a specific consulting team looking at this area, where companies now within Australia, we're trying to make sure that, companies now are making sure that they are able to report on this area, and making sure that they are ready to report on this area, because the reason being, New Zealand and Australia has a very close relationship. Normally, whatever that New Zealand does first, sometimes Australia tend to imitate. So if I think recently New Zealand has already made it compulsory for their listed companies to report on ESG. So big organization in Australia is trying to prepare themselves to be able to report on this, so that whenever the regulators say that, look, you have to report on ESG as a mandatory requirement in your annual reports, companies want to make sure that they are able to fulfill those regulations or fulfill that requirements as within the stipulated time. Because if they are not able to do that, that will pose a risk in terms of they will get penalized or penalties from the regulators. And when that happens, that will tarnish their reputation in the market. And another implication would be their investors might not want to continue investing in the organization. So the capabilities required for internal auditor in this area is ability to understand what are the requirements, the relevancy, the accuracy that needs to be reported. They need to understand, they need to be able to conduct materiality or risk assessment in terms of ESG framework. So if you want to ESG and try to get to understand the framework and what are the requirements and what are the practices, so that you will be able to assess the risk associated with it. And I think with ESG, there are a set of regulations already established, which, for example, the Global Reporting Initiative, the Sustainability Accounting Reporting Standard Boards also have already come up with new standards that they have to follow. So as an internal auditor, you need to be able to have clear understanding on how to report on this thing and what is required to be able to point the people within the organization towards the right channel and the proper way of documenting it. So that is all in terms of the 10 trends or 10 key risk area in 2022 that an internal auditor needs to to pay attention to make sure that the organization is in compliance and also survive in the market. So before I move further, I might take a pause here to take a couple of questions before we move to another section.
Okay, is there any questions you may pose to the speaker now? Perhaps maybe they will wait until the end of the session, Mr. Fad.
Okay, cool, no problem. Now, the next section is after those explanation, storytelling, sharing session, as a diploma in accounting information system, if I put myself in your shoes, I would ask, so what? So what as a student? So what as an accounting student? Why do I have to pay attention to this thing? Now, this is where we have to do better, where we have to think 10 steps ahead. So if you look at the capabilities required section in each and every slide, they will hint to you what kind of skills you require to beat your competitors when you look for a job in the future. So just imagine you're not the only diploma in accounting information system that's going to grad next year. You have thousands of candidates, thousands of graduates graduating the same time as you. So this is where you have to start thinking, where do I want to go? What area is my interest of area? And that's the reason why I chose this particular topic, because I think back then, I mean, a lot of things could have changed between 2010 after I graduated up until now. But back then, what I wish I could have had done better during my final year or during my students year was I want to be able to identify what skills I can polish and further and learn to stand out against other competitors. So back then, I graduated with degree in accounting. Yeah, I have another like 10,000 people graduating at the same time. And back then, so I have to find like my core competencies, like what makes me different from other candidates. But I can't simply do that without knowing what I'm into. Please don't study things people ask you to study. That was my mistake. So I studied accounting because that is the only course I applied for and I got it. But along the way, I learned to love it, and I learned that within accounting, you can do so many things. You can do finance, you can do banking, you can do human resource, because believe me, every single department within an organization, they will end up at finance. They will end up in accounting. If you want to hire a person a company have to pay a person. That's a fund or a money going out. The moment it start to involve money, somebody have to record that journal entry, that transaction. Again, it ends up at accounting, in accounting system. So that's where I am blessed. I didn't say that I regret the decision to continue furthering my studies in accounting up until my master's degree, because throughout the years, I've realized that I was in the right place. So that's where, for the past 9 years, I was not only had the opportunity to involved in finance related projects. At the moment, I'm doing contracts management project. I'm doing a talent acquisition project where you go to universities, you try to hire people to do, they call it vacationers here. Back then, they call it practical training. Uh, um, yeah, so those are the activities. The hire to retire process that I mentioned just now, I was fortunate enough to get involved in those areas. So what's next? I think look into that capabilities required, see what interests you the most. Try to test yourself against those areas. Are you a person that loves to deal with another person? If you are an extrovert, you like people, you don't like numbers, I'm not saying that accounting is not the best thing for you. No, because when you are in an organization, you can also get involved. Like, for example, that what I'm doing now. I'm a business analyst. 6 out of 7.5 hours a day, I talk to people. I have to talk to people and understand their requirements. If I can't do that, then if I don't love meeting people, then at the end of the day, I just might get exhausted. So number one, look into the capabilities and what interests you the most. It doesn't matter if you're doing DICE and you're interested in programming, which is fine. Continue your studies. This is where I put in these screenshots down there. So those are the things that you can go into, get in order to get free certifications, free training. Because I totally understand as a student, we have limited financial resources. Not everyone, each and every one of us was born in a family that fortunate enough to have unlimited financial resources. I think Puan Faiza know this very well. So I think back then I faced the same thing too. So what are the avenue that I can use to further stand out compared to my competitors? So say for example, I graduated in diploma in accountancy. I have a degree. I graduated in degree in accountancy, and then I go to market. Like I mentioned, another 10,000 candidates also have the same profile as I am. But if I have those diploma and degree in accountancy, and because I'm interested in cybersecurity, for example, if I have at least, like for example, cybersecurity foundation certificate, even though if it's just a free certification from Google, from Udemy, from Coursera, that is already a plus point how you can stand out against your competitors. So that shows to the employer that, look, this person, even though this person does not have a working experience, the attitude is there. The attitude to learn something new is there. The interest to continuously improve themselves is there. Definitely, if I am the recruiter, I will go for these candidates compared to this type of candidates compared to the other normal candidates. So what I am sharing with you here, the screenshots down there, those are the avenues where you can get free certifications, free courses, and they will actually issue you a certificate with like a proper certificate ID. Use this, don't waste your time. Well, it's easier said than done, because those days when I was a student, I also like spend times with my friends, doing stuff that other people like to do as a student, spend my scholarship money for things that is not beneficial. But those are the days. But I'm telling you now, enjoy life, but at the same time, try to also invest in yourself, invest in knowledge, because by doing so, it will help you significantly along the way.
Well,
Maybe I
Faiza, I
haven't,
think we have a few questions from the
yeah,
chat
okay.
box for Fadrullah. Hi, Fadrullah.
Yeah, Cik Zrul,
Apa
how are you?
khabar?
Khabar baik, Alhamdulillah. Yep, happy to take question now.
Okay, there a question from Puan Nur Hashimah. Okay, how far as internal auditor could react with the conflict of interest? It's in the check box, Mr. Fad.
So let me check the box.
How far as internal
Check.
auditor could react with the conflict of interest in organization, I think.
How far as internal auditor could react with conflict of interest? For Nohashima, can you elaborate more on the question? What do you mean by how far?
Okay,
Right here, yeah.
Mr. Fadrullah, can you hear
Mhm.
me?
Yep, loud and clear.
So in conducting your task, right, there are several conditions where you need to consider on influence on sometimes your good friends, okay? So it's come across of conflict of interest when you do your task with a close
Mhm.
friend influence. How you do in this particular situation in a day-to-day operation in conducting your task?
All right, that is a good question. Thank you for asking. So as part of, even though it's an internal auditor, you also have to fill up or comply with the independence check within your organization. So I think every organization has their own independence policy that you have to fulfill. Um, so by doing that, you are before you start an engagement, even though it's an internal auditor, say for example, I am internal auditor in PW. If I am an internal auditor in PwC, and then my next engagement would be to perform an internal audit or risk assessment on the procurement process, I have to fill up a set of questionnaires to declare any potential conflict of interest. So the moment I flag that, somebody within the team will or my superior will have a look at it and reassess whether I am the right candidate or the right resource to do that task. So that is checkpoint number one. And then checkpoint number two is a review process. So even though I am auditing, say for example, there are no other resources that can do that audit for me within the team. I'm the only available resource. So yes, I can go and perform the audit task in the department where I have my best friend in, but it may require different sets of review procedures before we finalize the outcome or the output of the audit. I hope that addressed your question.
So in that manner, you need to declare that you have relationship with that particular person or just silent.
We have to declare. It is a
Must
it will
declare.
be it is a compulsory and non-negotiable requirements. You can definitely keep silent, be silent in a way that, okay, fine, I just let nobody will know. But the moment it leaked out, it could potentially jeopardize your career as an internal auditor.
Okay, thank you,
Mr.
thank you.
Fadullah, we have
Yep.
many questions. Okay, we have tremendous
Okay.
feedback.
Okay.
Okay.
All right.
First one
Let
is from Hairul Akmal Rizal. Okay, is it true that an auditor can go to other countries to audit company's account, even the Facebook company? From one of
the
our
short.
students, Hairul Akmal.
So the short answer is yes. The long answer would be it kind of depends on the structure or the environment that you're in. The reason why I said that, because obviously if they can find somebody else within the same country, then they would go for that person. But unless if you are the only specialist in that area, people will fly you anywhere to do the audit. So that's where
Money comes in.
that's where the money comes in. And that's why I said earlier, please try to understand, get to know yourself and see where your interest lies in. The reason the moment you find your passion, that's where you will be investing a lot of your time into it. And that's where it will lead to you becoming an expert. So yeah, so it's a chain of reaction, I would say. It's a domino effect. But I have had, I have a friend. He used to work in EY Malaysia, and then he was sent. He was an internal auditor. Oh no, he was an external auditor, auditing systems, and he was flown to Vietnam and Hanoi, just to do audit, because he specialized in, if I'm not mistaken, they call it Prince 2. So Prince 2 is a certification related to project compliance. Not many people specialize in that. So he is one of the Malaysian that is
Specialist.
specialist in that. So they flew him over there to do the audit for about 3 months, and he come back. Yep. And then I hope that answers the
Will be,
question.
okay, so it is possible, okay? So student, it is possible by the current situation, many companies outsource, okay, your specialist. You can gain your specialization as soon as for now, okay? Gain your specialization, yeah? You may
Um,
work overseas, okay, but you may stay in Malaysia and perform work for overseas companies, right? The
Well,
next
a
question
personal,
would be,
sorry, Prof. Aiza, I think I forgot
yeah,
about one thing. I think another personal example that I can share here about overseas, because when the question asked auditor, my head straight away um, go to audit the next auditor I know. But in terms of my own experience, I am not an auditor, but when I first joined Cargill Malaysia Sdn Bhd, it's a multinational company based in in the US. It has a huge presence in Australia, in planting and exporting wheat. Um, so that's how I got my opportunity to move outside of Malaysia. So because when I was with the team in Malaysia, all my stakeholders, all the people that I liaise with, they are based either in Singapore, Thailand, and Australia and the Philippines. So my team, I hardly ever meet these people because I work with them online. So that's where I started to build network, build my networking within the organization, and then that's where I got my first shot in moving overseas. So not just as an auditor, um, if you specialize in something, because back then I was specializing in treasury management system. Yeah, it is called SAP. I helped Petronas to implement that system, and then I moved to Cargill, which was trying to implement the same thing. So that's where I got the opportunity to move abroad. Yep, I hope that helped.
okay, the next question would be, yeah, have you ever deal with difficult client? What would you do to handle them?
Have I ever dealt with difficult client? Yes, all the time. What would I do to handle them? It kind of depends on the scenario. Now, for example, when you are implementing, like when I'm in a project, I deal a lot with business users, and different business users have different requirements. So senior manager in accounting may have different requirements in a compared to a senior manager in cash management. So they will fight for their requirements. So what do you need to do is you need to be able to assess the requirements, state the facts, and then convince them to buy to your idea. So assess the scenario, get your facts right, and then try to come up with a plan, for example, to prioritize and to compromise with their requirements, and then negotiate with them. So along the way, I think 9 years have taught me a lot in negotiating with people. To be honest, that is my worst skill that I have at the moment. I'm still learning about it. It's a long life learning process for me, but having the ability to communicate, to think calmly when you are in difficult position, that's where you will be able to resolve the issues. Sometimes it is not like you have to pick sides. Sometimes you have to pick both sides. Like, for example, you have 10 requirements, you have 5 requirements. What if I accommodate 20% of both of your requirements? So those are the things that you have to think on the fly that is not being taught in schools or in universities. So yeah, that's how I dealt with them. I hope that answers the question.
Okay, the next question would be, I think I have to choose question because there are so
Is
many
it a lot?
questions in the chat room. Yeah.
Okay.
What has been the most challenging experience that you have had to face during your career progression?
Okay, that would be recently. Immediately came into my mind because now, in my case, I am not a local in Australia. English is not my first language. I am dealing with people who have been speaking English throughout their life. English has been their mother tongue. I joined PwC as a senior associate, and now I'm a manager after 2 years joining the company. I have to justify myself why I want to get a promotion. So you just imagine, if one person said that, look, why do you have to promote him? Because he won't be able to articulate, he don't have the same accent, he is not an English speaker, he might not be able to have the credibility to talk to people as fluent or as credible as they can, then I won't be able to get the promotion. So I think that is where we have to stay grounded and then really be firm about who we are. So I was able to justify, it was very challenging, I have to say. For example, you have to really put on paper what was your contribution to the team and to the organization, and then how does those contribution of yours be superior than your peers. It is very challenging because I'm not a person that love to talk to boast myself. So to come up with those justification was very challenging. And then to then having the conversation with your team leader, with the management level, to say that, look, I've done this, and this is different from what the other peers have been doing, and this is the impact. And then they will challenge you on the spot to say that, but anyone could have done that. But you could have done that better. So having those difficult conversation was very challenging. And I faced that, and Alhamdulillah, just got the promotion in December last year.
All right. New question from,
Yep.
I hope that answer your question. Okay, a very good question from our student. Another question comes from one of our fellow lecturer. Okay, Dr. Marjan. If the technology takes place, replace auditors' manual work, what's your opinion towards the auditor's independence? Do they independently conduct their responsibility, especially with big data?
Oh,
So
this is a
this
tough
one
one.
deals with the data analytic data.
Yep. Yeah, data analytics definitely is something that we're trying, the trend that we're going with at the moment. And we are also, I think it is quite common in organizations to implement bot, meaning trying to replace repetitive task by computer programming and in artificial intelligence. So now, definitely auditors' manual work can be taken over by technology, but I've read an article where it says they cannot fully replace what auditors can do. For example, assessing people happiness, the coming up with the framework, coming up with this the right framework for your particular environment within the company will be still be done by a human being, because yes, AI can imitate the way you think, but if you are developing an AI, it will be like specific to your company. The moment you want to adopt it to another company or another environment, then it won't be able to keep up. Then you have to start reinvesting your money into that particular new environment. So in terms of independence, definitely you won't. I mean, happy to be challenged here. It won't impact independence because it will be highly independent, because the bot will be the one doing your job based on the programming that have been configured. And definitely, before you can configure the programming rules, it has to be approved by different layers of regulators or committee within an organization, and then only you can implement those rules. So I would think by having manual works done by technology, it will be a good indication or a good way forward to mitigate the conflict of interest issues that are arising in an organization. And then, do they can independently conduct their responsibility, especially with this big data? Yes, I think, like I've mentioned, definitely with those sets of automation in place, definitely you can place a bot or you can place a technology on behalf of a person to do the audit, because technology won't have that sinister mind to conduct fraudulent activity, unless somebody go into the system at the back end, tweak the configuration to point it, to fulfill their fraudulent activities, then that could happen. But I think with proper control in place, that should be able to be mitigated. I hope that answers your questions. Those two questions.
Okay, so hopefully Dr. Marjan satisfied with the answer. Okay, another question would be from, I need to choose, there are tremendous amount of question here. I think I will choose this one. For digitalization and intelligent automation, if technology keep improving day by day, so internal audit job might be replaced with AI, okay? Does it mean when we, as an accounting student, need to what? The question is not finished. What are the skill, I think? Okay, Amal Faik, can you elaborate on your question?
Yes, madam. Uh, Does it mean we as an accounting student from now on need to focus by improving our knowledge on developing the technology regarding AI rather than focusing on with the skills that related to internal audit?
Yes, definitely. So the reason why I am sharing, thank you for asking the question, a very good question, Faik. Um, so for the digitalization, intelligent automation, let me get back to the question. Technology keep on improving every day. So internal audit job might be replaced by AI. Does it mean that we are accounting students? Like I mentioned just now, yes, some part of the task can be replaced by automation. Some might not. In terms of the internal audit skills, what you can polish is because you have to, at the end of the day, you have to choose whether you want to specialize in artificial intelligence, because that is another beast altogether. That is another world that you can explore if you want to become a specialist in an AI, artificial intelligence. But as an internal audit, you don't have to understand every single technical details within AI. You just need to understand the high level to understand how it operates, because as an internal auditor, you want to be able to leverage what the AI can perform. So you can still specialize in, or you can still be an internal auditor, but maybe specialize in artificial intelligence, because say for example you want to be able to audit how people develop the artificial intelligence process or programming language and stuff like that. So um, to answer your question, I hope I'm answering this right. So it doesn't mean that you have to let go of becoming an internal auditor. It's like in becoming an internal auditor is your core role, but your side or minor knowledge or minor skills are these artificial and intelligence area. Same like what I'm doing now. My core role is a business analyst, but my minor areas are human resource, contract management, procurement, and finance. So I hope that answers your question, Ahmad Faik.
Thank you so much.
Okay, anybody who wants to turn on their mic and ask the question directly, you may do so now.
And I think a thing worth mentioning here is I think in the era nowadays, from my experience, even in Malaysia, it is no longer the era where you have a degree in accounting and you just do accounting. People want to see diversity of skills for a candidate or for a person. So in Australia, it's quite common for a person to hold double degree. So you will have like bachelor in accounting and information system, or you may have finance, the bachelor in law and finance. So it is very, very highly recommended for you to also explore what are the potential areas apart from accounting and information system that you want to explore into. That's why I said earlier, if we have this course back then when I was doing my diploma, I would have chosen accounting information system. Yep. Sorry, I have Ikan. Yeah. Is there a question before?
Continue, please continue. Yeah.
So I think I saw a question by Muhammad Akil. What was the extent of your work on the audit, and were there any changes to the scope of work performed? Sorry, Akil, I am not an auditor. But what was the extent of your work on audit, and were the changes to the scope of work performed? I'm not an auditor, I'm a business analyst, but the scope of work keeps on changing every time. as not specifically to being an auditor, as an employee to an organization, you should have this. We should have this attitude where, oh, it is something that is outside of our comfort zone. Take the challenge to learn about it, and then strive towards excellence in that area. I can share a personal experience on that because, like I've mentioned, I am an accountant by education, and then was involved in finance software. The reason why I was managed to branch into human resource area was because there's one time a person from my team member who specialized in human resource had to leave the firm or had to leave the organization, and I was the only business analyst back then available. So I was put into that role without having any context. So it's like throw me in the ocean and I straight away swim and survive. So and because I was open to learn about that area, so that's where it got easier. Definitely it involves a lot of reading and asking people questions. And don't be afraid of asking stupid questions, because there's no such thing as stupid question. Just ask questions. It's just that don't ask the same question repetitively to the same person. They might get pissed.
Okay,
All right.
we may have a few questions more. We have another 9
Mhm.
minutes more. Okay, I think choose how bad can it be when the data of audit leaked? Okay, Muhammad Ihsan from Muhammad Ihsan.
Muhammad
The
Ihsan,
disaster,
how bad?
disaster. It deals
It
with the
can be
disaster.
very disastrous to the organization. So how bad can it be when the data of audit leaked? Now, the data, the audit data is not the only data that will pose a risk to the organization. We have to understand that audit data is actually data of the organization, within the organizations. So, for example, if you're talking about audit data on human resource remuneration, you just imagine when people remuneration meaning salary information, your amount of the salary, bank account of the employees, um, their IDs, their IC. I mean, IDs is IC, like their company ID, their personal identification number. Those information can be used by irresponsible people out there to, for example, forge um, fake IDs, can also be used to transfer funds from those accounts to their accounts. So, and to the individuals, it is disastrous in the sense that that's their hard-earned money. Just imagine you work for a month and you don't get paid because the money was stolen by somebody else. For an organization, it shows that um, their control procedures are not thorough, are not tight enough to prevent those leakages from happening. If it's a company, a public listed company, investors won't invest in that company, so you won't get the capital for you to keep on expanding your business. Your business can't expand, and it could even lead up to bankruptcy or your company being disclosed. I mean, being um, liquidated. I hope that answered the question.
Okay, may we choose a question from Alif Ikram? I think this one
Alif
is still
Ikram.
on AI. Okay, on your opinion, if accounting can be done by AI, does syllabus that been taught by these days need to be changed in the future? The meaning the syllabus of taught in the university, does it need a change in future?
To be honest, I am in no position to answer that question. Reason being, I left academia world a long time ago. Definitely, I think within universities, they have regular reviews of their syllabus to make sure that it's up to date and current. Um, for me, I would say I will take charge of my development. So on top of what I have in my syllabus, I will keep on thinking, what else do I want to learn? So if AI is your interest, for example, or cybersecurity, is your interest, I think you are, I mean, your generation is very fortunate in the sense that you have all informations at the tip of your fingers, as compared to my time where we have to pay a lot to just get a good connectivity or a prepaid internet connection. So for your generations, it's very fortunate of you to be able to access those information. Um, Try to understand where your passion lies, and then try to venture out and get more exposure into that area. That is my advice. Yes, syllabus could change, but it might not change by the time you graduate, or because changing syllabus is not as simple as putting one course and take out another course. It involves a lot of rigorous review and approval process. So in terms of what you can do now, definitely try to explore things that um, you can do to improve or enhance your knowledge.
Okay, I open up to one last question. I just want anybody to open their mic and ask question directly to Mr. Fadrullah, if possible. One last question because we are coming to the end of the session, okay?
I have a question, madam.
Mhm.
Okay,
You may proceed, yeah.
and like Mr. Fadrullah said in the presentation just now, in the past 2 years, technology became tremendously important to the humanity at the moment, but it is only because of the pandemic outbreak. So my question is, if the pandemic is completely stopped, do you think the technology is still crucial as the past 2 years? And if it a yes, can you tell us why? Thank you.
Thank you, Ahmad Muradi. I like the way you think. Yes, even if it's not because of the pandemic, technology will definitely be a key area that will make sure that a business survive. Because you have to understand, apart from the pandemic, we also have competition within the market with your competitors. So, for example, technology is not something new. Back then, when I was in Petronas, I relied on technology a lot. I provided training. I conducted training for people in Mexico. While being in Malaysia, I conducted training for people in Sudan, for our business there. Definitely, technology plays an important role. So it's if people are advancing, if organizations are advancing their technological platform rigorously, not because of pandemic, I would think that it's because of the competition. They have to make sure that they are ahead of the competitor. I hope that answers your question. And it's a cruel world out there, so you have to make sure that you always 2-3 steps ahead of people.
Okay, then I think I just want to add up. Okay, this is one of the faculty effort. Okay, to bring closer the industry as with the syllabus that we taught in classes. Okay, by way we bring up practitioners. Okay, people like Mr. Fadrullah who has a first-hand experience to share with you students. Okay, on what he experienced or what he practiced outside, okay, to bring it to classroom, okay, by where he share his opinion, okay, how he bring out his career path, okay, to up to this level, okay, from where he left us in 2012, okay. He was once our colleagues in the faculty of UiTM Arau for a short while, okay. And then he joined Petronas, okay, to further up his career, okay. By way like this, we get closer to you, okay. Mr. Fadrullah flown, okay, all the way from Australia to be with us, just even though online, okay, to be with us this evening, okay. We thank him for all his effort and his time, okay. And I would like to thank you for all the questions that are posted. We received tremendous amount overwhelming questions from the student. I think they are very interested in your presentation, Mr. Fad. Okay, and we couldn't afford to answer all of them. Okay, but maybe we can still look into, okay, after the session, okay, our screenshot, maybe Mr. Fad has the time to answer any important question, okay. For those students, don't forget to click your e-certificate link, okay, to fill up your questionnaire in order for you to get the e-certificate, okay. And thank you, Mr. Fad, for the fruitful and yet inspiring and motivating, okay, presentation to our students, okay, to follow your footsteps later on, okay. I see this presentation is very closely linked to my subject in the in the university, okay. As for, I think I've been teaching accounting information system from the last time I taught Mr. Fad, okay, 20 years back, okay. So this is what I always what we call beletiak dalam kelas regarding accounting information system, internal control, and so on, which many of you has fall asleep. Okay. Banyak yang tidur bila membebel pasal internal control ni, okay. So this is where Mr. Fad has shared his experience on what we have been discussing in class in ICE subject, okay. And I think thank you very much. So please open your camera for us for the photography session. Thank you.
Yep.
And look
If I
forward for
may,
yeah.
if I may say for the last word, and again, I'm speaking on behalf of my capacity as the alumni of the university, and very happy to do so. I'm very happy to be part of the program, and I'm not representing of my current employer, or be it like giving professional advice.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Fad. We used to call him Mr. Fad lah. Okay, in class we call him Fad. Okay, until now tu panggil Fad juga lah. Okay,
Yep.
and whoever interested, Mr. Fad is still single. Okay.
Single.
Single and available. I don't know whether he's available or not. So boleh cuba lah, boleh try. Okay. And thank you very much, Mr. Fadrullah, for this fruitful and inspiring session. Thank you. And can you open your camera for the photography session?
My
We are
pleasure.
looking forward to invite you again in future if we have any this kind of program. All right. Thank you.
Inshallah.
So everybody can open your camera for photograph session. All right. Okay, 1, 2, 3, smile. One more time. 1, 2, 3. All right. Thank you so much, everyone.
All right. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Fad. See you again online or offline.
Okay, thank you, Fad.
Okay, thank you, Fad.
Thank you.
Thank you
Thank
for
you.
your
Pleasure to be
time.
here.
Thank you.
Ingat lagi tak semua muka-muka ni?
Tak ingat dah tu.
Ingat tak berubah langsung Encik Azrul.
Tak ubah langsung
Dia
tu,
tak
kekal
berubah.
muda tu.
Oh,
Muka sama macam 20 tahun dulu tau.
itulah rahsia awet muda.